I'm a domestic violence survivor. Even now, after all these years, it's hard to believe that that was a way of life for me. I know I shocked my friends and family around the world when I broke the story to Us Weekly magazine about my abusive past. My fans wrote me back. They were bewildered. How could it be that the judge they saw on TV, laughing, cheering, screaming, and successful, could have possibly been that person that would allow themselves to be abused? Maybe they thought I had abusive parents, abusive siblings, maybe abusive relatives. Was I hanging with a bad crowd? Was it where I grew up? I must have grown up in poverty. The answers must have been in my childhood. So let me tell you a little bit about my childhood so you can completely understand. I grew up in a beautiful rural town in Ohio called Canal Fulton. I had hard-working, loving, and strict Catholic parents. My mother was actually a nun early in your life, so if you can start to get the picture. Hard to believe, I know. I had 3 brothers, and I was the 4th boy. There was the beautiful Ohio Erie Canal and the Tuscarawas River that ran through my beautiful little town. There was absolutely no dancing going on anywhere there because you'd probably be arrested if you were ever caught doing the mambo. My idea of a good time was building a raft and floating down the canal or going fishing or log jumping with my brothers. I was truly a Huckleberry Mary. If you've ever seen the show Mary Berry RFD, it might as well have been the backdrop of where I grew up. And I wanted to do everything I could. To give you some idea, I was a majorette and then head majorette. I was first chair, bassoon in the all-state band. I ran AAU and varsity track and cross-country track, long jump, hurdles, high jump, 400 meters, well really it was 440 back then. Volleyball team, basketball team, vice president of the senior class, vice president of the radio club. I was in the choir, I was in the 4-H club, I was in the home economic club and in school plays. I would like to say I majored in extracurricular activities then. And I really, to be honest, I didn't study very much. I had to rest up for all my activities. I spent many hours in detention for laughing all the time. I would start, somebody else would start. I heard a funny laugh, that's all it took. Before long, the whole class was out of control, and the teacher threw me out. I tell you all this stuff not to brag, but to give you the full picture, I was no shrinking violet, and that the misconception of an abused woman as a low-income, weak person, that is just not the case. Domestic violence crosses all socioeconomic backgrounds, age, race, religion, nationality, and education. When I left for college, I was a strong, young woman. And I had the hopes and dreams, like most, like everybody in this audience. Never did I think I would be in a relationship that rape and beating would become the norm. I cry a lot during this speech, so give me a break. You can count them. I'm down to 6 now. I'm hoping for 3 this time, but I'll forgive myself if that doesn't happen. Early on in school, I met a handsome, charismatic, funny Middle Eastern boy. He was the only son of an extremely wealthy, powerful, and connected family. His young adult life was one of privilege and extraordinary excess. The only son of this prominent family was denied absolutely nothing. When I went to Ohio University, my 2nd year, he quickly professed his love for me, and he wanted to get married, and the pressure came every single day. I said I wanted to wait till after college. I didn't want to get married until I was through with college, but the pressure was so hard. We moved in together after a couple months, even though I kept saying I wanted to wait until after college. But his first mental manipulation happened one day when he told me he was leaving that night for Michigan State and that he had been transferred. I was in love. My heart just sank. We spent the last 8 hours making love and sobbing my eyes out, and at the stroke of midnight, he got down on his knee and he said, will I marry you? And I said, words out of will you marry me? And of course, after the day's trauma, I said, yes. And you guessed it, he never had a transfer to Michigan State. This did take the pressure off my parents, though, as well, who were not exactly happy that I was living in sin for 2 months. I felt lucky that my knight in shining armor was here and staying because it was not going to be a church wedding. I told everyone that this was going to be more like a living permit. I agreed to a civil ceremony, and that years later I would have a church wedding of some sort. So we were married in the mayor's office of Athens, Ohio. But the day I signed my marriage papers, I think I signed an ownership property agreement where my rights now became null and void. Soon the illusion of bliss was gone in one swift moment in time. This is still hard to say. The first time my husband raped and beat me was a few months after we were married. Life as I knew it was never the same. I was 20 years old. He was 19. I put up quite a fight, but I cannot remember what exactly set him off that time, but jealousy was growing every single day. I was no longer allowed to say hello to anyone, and always on my walk back from work, he would watch to make sure I had no contact with people. We started to fight, and it was a real knockdown, drag out. And in the middle of this horrible nightmare, he decided he wanted to have sex. Trust me, at this point, that was the last thing I wanted to do. The struggle continued until I was so exhausted. I just lay there with my arms over my head, and I was looking straight into the eyes that used to be beautiful green, had turned icy and black. I did not recognize this person. I only felt extreme hatred looking straight back at him. The fight was so bad that the neighbors called the police after what I am sure they thought was a homicide about to happen. The police knocked on my door, and when it opened, he answered. I hid in the bedroom. I can hear them ask, where is she? What have you done to her? We need to see her. In his defiant voice, he responded, what do you want? You have no business here. She's my wife. The sense of entitlement in his voice, that he was allowed to do whatever he wanted with me because I was his wife, rang in my ears loud and clear. The officers asked to see me, and with my clothes ripped to shreds and bruises on my face and body, I came out. The evil look in my husband's eyes shut me down in 1 second. They asked if I was okay, and I put my head down and I said yes. The humiliation, and it was unbearable for anyone to see me like that. I thought this would have been easier for me if I had been raped and beaten by a complete stranger. When it is your husband and someone that you have fallen in love with, what this does to the psyche is like no other betrayal. At first, it's extreme disbelief sets in. Then the apologies and the promises that this will never happen again. I'm so sorry. I love you so much. I'll never let it happen again, with tears running down his face. This will never happen again, only seemed to become a mantra played out in my marriage over and over again. the gifts, the vacations, to prove everything was going to be all right, seemed so insignificant to the horror it was trying to hide. I can't tell you how many times I was told I would be homeless if I left, which still drives me to this day, or worse. He told me that anybody that does him wrong, or if I left, he will come for them, whether 1 week or 30 years from now, and slit their throat in the middle of the night. Another time that greatly affected me was when I went to visit my parents in Barberton. While there, I wanted to see my ex-boyfriend's sister, who I used to babysit for, and I just loved them, and I hadn't seen them in 2 years. I knew it was risky at this point, but I told my mother, and I had a friend take me down there. He was pacing in my parents' house like a caged animal, and my mother finally told him where I was. He picked me up, and the beating started immediately in the car. It was snowing hard and that night, and I was trying to defend myself. As the car had to slow down because of the snow drifts, I jumped out of the car and onto 236, trying to get to my girlfriend's house. As I ran through the snowfield, it was so difficult. The snow was so heavy, and I was emotionally exhausted and fell to the ground. And he caught me, and he dragged me back into the car. When I got to my parents' house, I ran in and I locked him out. I thought I was safe and that my father would do something about it. I had a black eye on my face at that time. I really just wanted my father to kick his ass. But instead, both my parents sat me down at a table and told me to make my marriage work. This response made me feel responsible, and that I had to stay in my marriage if I wanted to be a good Catholic. When you're abused by someone you love, your self-esteem is non-existent. Humiliation and shame is beyond what anybody can bear. The fear of him killing you if you leave or say anything to anyone keeps you in that invisible prison for years. To others from the outside looking in, it looks so easy. Why don't you just leave? He leaves the country for 2 months, sometimes 6 months at a time at one time. But only those that have been there understand the invisible shackles that are tightened around your hands and feet and the imaginary gag that is pressed against your lips. You move freely around society doing ordinary things, thinking you are the only one. You look at strangers and think, can you see me? Can anyone see me? I'm trying to tell you through my eyes. Can anyone see me out there? I'm screaming for help, but no one can hear me. No one can see me. The abuser, my lover, has silenced my voice. I was very excited when I graduated a quarter early at Ohio University. I had several job offers in the Athens Public School District in physical education. I felt a little proud of myself with so many kids graduating from physical education that I had offers. But he had other plans for me. As soon as I found something I loved, he said, we're going to move. I can't work here. He said, we're moving to Washington, D.C., and that he had a job at the Lebanese embassy. He dressed every day, went to work at the embassy, but it was all elaborate lies. He never had a job there. I never knew where he might have been, but maybe he was hanging out there. I'm sure his family knew. It was all just to move me away from something that I may have loved. The level of manipulation was beyond belief. In reality, the truth was I was a rich kid's slave to do whatever he wanted. At any time it looked like I may have a chance to work, we would move again to a more isolated area. Luckily for me, he left sometimes for 2 months and one time for 6. I was left with very little money, but it did give me a mental reprieve. When he was away and I had no money, I walked into a dance studio for a part-time job. After 1 month, they saw that I was probably going to quit, and I didn't really see anything too inspirational there. The manager of that dance studio said, "I think you need to see the United States Dance Championships in New York." So I said, "Awesome, I've never been to New York City." I walked into that ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria, 3-tiered balconies, decorated so ornately. I was only 10 feet inside that door when I saw 25 couples swirling and trolling across that floor, unbelievable multiple colors of costumes, hair and makeup, literally everything I was not at that time. And I looked up at the people that brought me, and I said, "I'm going to be a professional ballroom dancer, and I'm going to be the United States champion." They looked back at me and said, "Jesus, God, we just hoped you were going to stay at our dance studio." Weren't expecting all that. I thought, how beautiful, 2 people dancing together, how romantic. This was definitely some place I wanted to escape to. Dancing put back life into my soul. Someone said it recently best, it's all over the internet right now, or at least on my site because I'm a dancer, that dance is the answer. Because when you dance, you lose yourself. You lose your personality. You forget your name. You forget your job. You forget your status. You forget your future. You forget your past. It makes you be involved in the now. And the now is blissful. And that's where I needed to be. It made me feel pretty again, because trust me, abuse makes you feel so ugly, so dirty, and it helped me to rebuild my self-esteem until one day I could make that escape. I got into the car one day that someone had co-signed for me, and I drove across country alone with $500 from her and another $1,500 that I had saved up while he was away. I'm one of the lucky ones that I found something like dance that I had a passion for and that I loved so much that I felt like that was worth fighting for. I look back on my life now and I wonder why wasn't I worth fighting for alone, without anything else? I'll never completely understand, but the psychological warfare of domestic abuse is a worthy opponent, but one that can be toppled. Domestic violence has a home in silence, and there are tons of horrific statistics, and these are just some of the few. 1 in every 4 women will experience some form of domestic violence in their life. Young boys who witness domestic violence are twice as likely to abuse their own partners and their children when they become adults. There are 16,800 homicides due to domestic violence, and those are only the numbers that we know of for sure. A lot of times things are allocated to something else, a different reason. 2.2 million injuries that cost this country $37 billion each year. 89% of domestic violence victims who own pets say their abuser has either threatened or injured or killed their family pet. And nearly half of all victims of abuse said they stayed in the relationship because of the fear of the safety of their pet. Only a mere 6 to 10% of domestic violence shelters allow animals. My own husband, when he went away, I bought a Maltese. And when he came back, he was even jealous of the damn dog. He couldn't stand that this dog loved me more than him and would force that dog to lay with him. And when it didn't, he kicked it down the stairs and he would take it and throw it into cabinets and lock the door. Many fights ensued over this situation because he took away or tried to take the only thing that I loved at that time. A gun inside the house increases the risk of someone being killed by 500%. 1 in 6 college women have been sexually abused in a dating relationship. 52% of college women report knowing a friend who has experienced violent and abusive dating behavior. Physical, sexual, digital now, verbal, and other controlling behaviors. 30 to 60% of intimate partner violence perpetrators also abuse their children in the household. 80% of attacks occur in victims at home just because it's much easier to get away with it. To abuse someone without getting caught. A mind-boggling 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have been a victim of physical brutality by an intimate partner. That makes intimate partner violence the single greatest cause of injury in women today. Can you imagine if this was a health issue, which it has been deemed by the government, but yet we don't attack this problem as if it's like we attacked COVID. There are millions of people here in this country that we are at a different kind of war. Consider this. The number of women killed by current or former male partners added up to nearly double the soldiers' lives lost in the war in Afghanistan and Iraq during the same 11-year time frame. Domestic violence is an epidemic, no matter what the statistics you look at. Yet as a society, we often close our eyes to this matter. So, how do we fix this? The key is changing people's attitudes. People need to understand that it's everybody's business now, not just that of the cops and the judges alone. We all have an obligation on this one. Look at the shifts in cultures about how we feel about smoking and recycling in recent decades. 30 years ago, it was culturally appropriate to smoke wherever you were, at home, on the job, on the bus, in the plane. My parents smoked with us 4 kids in the back seat with the windows rolled up in the wintertime. Both of them smoked. I mean, you would be arrested today if that happened. Or anybody would kick in and jump to your defense, wouldn't they? Get those kids out of the car, I'm calling child services. Everything like that would happen so fast. Now it's against the law, culturally inappropriate. I myself, even though my family smoked, so if I'm someplace now, all of a sudden it's like a telescope comes up, somebody's smoking. Oh my God, that person has a cigar. Literally, I start to get upset. We shifted norms and behaviors. It's the same thing with recycling. I remember we didn't think twice when I was growing up that we threw garbage out the window onto the highway. Today, we changed that. You have to pay a fine if you get caught. We recycle things now. We have changed the behaviors. That's what we want to do and respect about domestic violence. We know how to do it already. We just have to take it and do it with this. I'm a woman with a voice. My silence is broken. I no longer walk invisible. We are all relevant. The basic human condition is that we are all created equal. And for the second half of my life, I am free. And for the second half, I will no longer be locked in my self-proclaimed prison of fear and silence. And I will never let this happen again. Domestic violence is part of the threads that are woven into the fabric of who I am, but it does not define me. You are the only one in control of your destiny, and you can take what happens to you in life and drown, or you can choose to rise up. You can choose to laugh, and you can choose to overcome it. I didn't say it was easy, and I'm not telling anybody here today that it's an easy road, but you are all worth it. No one can ever take your spirit. It is your own. It was important for me to tell this story for those who are in that place right now. Those of you that see me on TV laughing and screaming and having the time of my life, because I am. I can only wish this gives hope to those of you that are in that abusive situation right now, and that you can walk or run out of that jail and go through those doors and find the little girl once again, and the dreamer, and a better life. That's Mike as well. Sorry. The life your parents always wanted for you, and the life you always wanted for yourself. It's never too late. For the rest of my life, I will fight to make a difference. I am no longer silent, I am no longer invisible. Hear me when I say, there is a war going on against women and children in this country. In closing, I would like to quote Louise Hayes, and I'd like you to repeat after me. In the infinity of life, where I am, all is perfect, whole, and complete. The past has no power over me. Because I am willing to learn. I am willing to change. I see the past as necessary. To bring me where I am today. I am willing to begin. Where I am right now. To clean the rooms. Of my mental house. I know it does not matter.